Hashtag stranded on a fading space settlement story. First document. Marcus Chen pressed his face against the cracked viewport of research station Omega-7, watching another piece of debris spiral away into the void. The solar collectors had failed 3 days ago, and the backup fusion core was running on fumes. Around him, the skeletal crew of 12 moved through their daily routines with the grim efficiency of people who knew they were probably going to die out here. "Still nothing from the relief ships?" asked Dr. Sarah Martinez, the station's chief botanist. Her hydroponic gardens, once the pride of the Outer Rim colonies, now struggled to produce enough oxygen to keep them alive. Marcus shook his head, not trusting his voice. As the station's communications officer, he'd sent out distress calls for 2 weeks straight. The corporate mining consortium had promised a rescue vessel, but that was before the markets crashed and half the outer settlements were abandoned. Now they were just another liability on a balance sheet, too expensive to save. The station groaned around them, metal stress fractures spreading through the hull like spider webs. Omega-7 had been built to last 50 years, but that was when the corporation still cared about safety margins. Now, after only 23 years of operation, she was falling apart. The artificial gravity fluctuated randomly, making everyone nauseous. The water recycling systems leaked constantly, leaving brown stains on the walls that looked disturbingly like rust or blood. "Marcus, get up here," called Commander Jane Thompson from the bridge. Her voice carried the weight of someone who'd watched too many good people die in the black between stars. "We've got something on the long-range sensors." Marcus pushed off from the viewport and floated through the corridor, using handholds to navigate in the unreliable gravity. The bridge was barely large enough for 3 people, packed with outdated equipment that hadn't seen an upgrade in a decade. Thompson stood hunched over the sensor array, her gray hair escaping from its regulation bun. "What VE you got?" Marcus asked, pulling himself into the communications chair. "Unknown contact, bearing 27 Mark 5. Moving fast, really fast. Faster than anything in our database." Thompson's fingers danced over the controls, trying to get a clearer reading. "Range is approximately 400,000 kilometers and closing." Marcus felt his heart skip. Ships didn't just appear out here, not unless they were running dark or using technology he'd never heard of. "Any response to our distress beacon?" "Negative. They're on a direct intercept course, though. ETA is about 6 hours at current velocity." The possibilities ran through Marcus's mind like a checklist of nightmares. Pirates wouldn't waste fuel hitting a dead station unless they knew something valuable was aboard. Corporate raiders might show up to strip the facility for scrap, but they usually waited until everyone was dead first. The worst option was aliens, though nobody had seen hide nor hair of non-human intelligence in the 40 years since humanity started spreading through the galaxy. "Should I wake the others?" Thompson asked. "Not yet. Let's see if we can get more information first." Marcus activated the communication array, cycling through all known frequencies. "Unknown vessel, this is Research Station Omega-7. Please identify yourself and state your intentions." Static filled the speakers for several minutes. Then, just as Marcus was about to try again, a voice responded. It was clearly female, speaking accented standard with an odd musical quality that made the hair on his arms stand up. "Greetings, children of Terra. I am Zarathel of the Crimson Flame Clan. I hear your distress and offer aid, if you will accept it." Marcus and Thompson exchanged glances. The woman's accent was unlike anything either of them had heard before, and the formal phrasing sounded almost ceremonial. More concerning was how she'd called them children of Terra instead of humans or colonists. "Zarathel, this is Communications Officer Chen. We appreciate your offer of assistance. What is your vessel's registry and point of origin?" Another pause, filled with what sounded like whispered conversation in an unknown language. When the woman spoke again, there was amusement in her voice. "Registry? We do not register our ships with your bureaucrats, young Chen. As for origin, I suppose you could say we come from the deep dark, beyond the rim of your maps. But these matters can wait. Your station is dying, yes? Life support failing, hull breaches spreading?" Marcus felt ice in his veins. Their distress signal had mentioned mechanical failures, but not the specific details the stranger somehow knew.
How do you know about our hull integrity?
Because I can see the fractures spreading through your metal bones, little one. And I can smell the fierce sweat of your crew through the void.
My people have senses your kind cannot imagine. Thompson leaned over the microphone. This is Commander Thompson, ranking officer of this facility.
If you're willing to assist with evacuation, we have 12 personnel in need of immediate transport to the nearest inhabited system.
Only 12? How sad. Once, stations like yours housed thousands.
The woman's voice carried genuine sorrow.
Very well, Commander Thompson. We will dock with your vessel in 5 hours.
Prepare your people for transport, but know this: my ship cannot take you to your colonies. The nearest human settlement is too far, and your life support will not last the journey.
Marcus's chest tightened. Then, where can you take us? To my people's sanctuary.
It is not far from here, and you will be safe while we arrange more suitable transport.
But, I must warn you, you will see things that challenge your understanding of the universe. My people are not like yours.
The communication cut out, leaving Marcus and Thompson staring at each other in the sudden silence.
Around them, Omega-7 continued its death rattle, hull plates popping with thermal stress. What do you think? Thompson asked. Marcus considered their options.
Stay aboard a dying station and hope for a miracle, or trust their lives to a mysterious stranger who claimed to come from beyond the edge of known space. When he put it that way, the choice was obvious.
I think we don't have much of an alternative.
But let's get everyone together and brief them. If we're walking into something strange, we should do it with our eyes open.
2 hours later, the entire crew had assembled in the main common area.
Marcus looked around at the faces of people who'd become his family over the past 3 years. Dr. Martinez with her perpetually dirt-stained hands from working in the gardens.
Chief Engineer Petrov, whose Russian accent got thicker when he was stressed.
Young Tommy Harrison, barely 22 and on his first deep space assignment. They all deserved to know what they were getting into.
Okay, people, Thompson began.
We've got a situation that's both good news and potentially very bad news.
The good news is that rescue is coming. The bad news is that our rescuer isn't exactly what we were expecting.
She explained about the mysterious ship and its even more mysterious captain. The crew listened in growing alarm as details emerged about the stranger's knowledge of their situation and her cryptic warnings about her people being different. So let me get this straight, said Petrov, his thick fingers drumming on the table.
Unknown ship with unknown technology, piloted by people who claim to be non-human, wants to take us to a secret base somewhere in unmapped space?
That's about the size of it, Marcus confirmed. And our alternative is to stay here and die when the life support gives out, added Dr. Martinez. Also correct. The crew fell silent, each lost in their own thoughts.
Finally, Tommy spoke up.
His voice cracked slightly with nervousness.
Do we really think they're aliens? I mean, after 40 years of exploration, wouldn't we have found someone by now? Marcus had been wondering the same thing.
Humanity had spread across hundreds of star systems, terraformed dozens of worlds, and sent probes to thousands more. They'd found plenty of dead civilizations' ruins and artifacts that proved intelligence had once flourished and died out.
But never any living aliens.
Maybe we have been looking in the wrong places, suggested Dr. Lisa Park, the station's xenobiologist. Her eyes lit up with the kind of excitement only a scientist could feel when faced with the unknown. Think about it, we explore along the galactic plane, following trade routes and habitable systems. But what if there are civilizations that developed in the deep dark, in the void between spiral arms? That would explain how they stayed hidden, Thompson mused. No star systems to detect, no electromagnetic signatures to pick up. They could have entire fleets out there and we'd never know. A new sound echoed through the station, a low, harmonic vibration that seemed to come from the hull itself. Marcus felt it in his bones, like standing too close to a massive church organ. The lights flickered, and several people grabbed onto their chairs as the artificial gravity stuttered.
What was that? Whispered Tommy.
Marcus was already moving toward the communications station when the speakers crackled to life.
Children of Terra, this is Zarathel. We have arrived. Preparing to dock with your vessel now.
Through the viewports, Marcus could see lights approaching, but not the harsh white spots of human ships. These were warm, golden, with hints of red and orange that pulsed like a heartbeat. As the vessel drew closer, he could make out its shape, and his jaw dropped. The ship was enormous, easily 10 times the mass of Omega 7. But, more than its size, it was the design that took his breath away. Instead of the utilitarian boxes and cylinders of human engineering, this craft flowed like a living thing. Its hull curved and twisted in organic spirals, covered in what looked like scales that shifted color as he watched.
Protrusions along its length resembled fins or wings, though they served no obvious aerodynamic purpose in vacuum.
"My God," breathed Dr. Park. "It's beautiful." A series of gentle impacts ran through the station as docking clamps engaged. The harmonic vibration returned, stronger now, and Marcus realized it was some kind of communication system. His instruments detected no electromagnetic radiation, no radio waves or laser transmissions.
Whatever technology these people used, it was completely beyond human understanding. "All station personnel, this is your final boarding call," came Zarathel's voice. "Bring only essential personal items. Food and equipment are unnecessary, we will provide for your needs."
Marcus grabbed his personal data pad and a photo of his sister's family back on Earth. Around him, the others were doing the same, collecting small mementos and irreplaceable memories. Dr. Martinez carefully sealed a container of seeds from her garden. Petrov picked up a toolkit that had belonged to his grandfather. The airlock cycled with a soft hiss, and warm air flowed into the station. It smelled of growing things and something else, something wild and electric that made Marcus's pulse quicken. A figure appeared in the doorway, backlit by golden light. Zarathel stepped into the station, and Marcus felt his world shift on its axis. She was humanoid but definitely not human. Tall and graceful, with skin that had a subtle bronze sheen. Her hair was deep red with highlights that seemed to shift between copper and gold. But it was her eyes that captured him, vertical pupils like a cat's, set in irises the color of molten amber. When she moved, he caught glimpses of something beneath her fitted clothing that might have been scales. Most striking of all were the 2 elegant horns that curved back from her temples, polished to a mirror shine. They weren't crude or animalistic, but beautiful in the same way as a gazelle's antlers or a bird's plumage. "Greetings," she said, and her voice in person was even more musical than over the communicator.
"I am sorry we could not arrive sooner.
Your station suffers greatly."
Thompson stepped forward, obviously struggling to process what she was seeing. "Thank you for coming. We're ready to evacuate." Zarathel's gaze swept over the assembled crew, lingering for a moment on each face.
When those amber eyes met his, Marcus felt a jolt of electricity run down his spine. There was ancient wisdom in that gaze, but also something playful and warm. "You have endured much hardship," she said, addressing the group.
"But know that you are safe now. My people honor courage in the face of the void. You will be welcomed as honored guests."
She gestured toward the airlock.
"Come. Let us depart this place before it becomes your tomb."
As the crew filed through the airlock, Marcus hung back, taking one last look at the station that had been his home for 3 years. The lights were already dimming as the failing power systems gave up the fight. In a few hours, Omega 7 would be nothing but another piece of debris drifting in the dark.
"You grieve for the metal shell?" Zarathel asked quietly, having noticed his hesitation.
Marcus turned to find her standing close beside him. Up close, he could see that her skin really did have scales, tiny ones that caught the light like scattered jewels.
"It wasn't much, but it was home." "Home is not a place, Marcus Chin. It is the people who matter to you, and they walk ahead of us into safety."
She placed a hand on his shoulder, and he felt warmth spread through him. Her touch was gentle but unmistakably strong.
"Besides, I think you will find our sanctuary far more comfortable than this failing station."
As they stepped through the airlock into her ship, Marcus was struck by the warmth and richness of the air.
The walls glowed with soft bioluminescence, and the corridors curved organically like passages through a living tree.
The floor beneath his feet felt more like polished wood than metal.
"How is this possible?" he asked. Zarathel smiled, revealing teeth that were slightly pointed but not threatening. "Your people build machines to carry you through the void. We grow them." The implications of that statement hit Marcus like a physical blow. A living ship. Bioengineering on a scale that made human technology look like stone knives and bear skins. What kind of civilization could create such marvels? The crew was led to a spacious chamber filled with what could only be called furniture, though nothing quite matched human designs. The seats were more like nests, perfectly molded to support a humanoid form. The walls displayed moving patterns of light that Marcus gradually realized weren't decorations but some kind of information system. "Rest here while we travel," Zarathel told them. "The journey to our sanctuary will take several hours. Food and drink will be provided shortly."
As she turned to leave, Marcus found himself calling out,
"Zarathel? Thank you for saving us."
She paused, looking back with an expression he couldn't quite read.
"Do not thank me yet, Marcus Chen. You have not seen what waits ahead."
After she left, the crew settled into their strange accommodations with varying degrees of comfort. Dr. Park was already examining the walls, fascinated by the living technology.
Petrov sat rigidly upright, clearly uncomfortable with anything he couldn't understand or repair.
Tommy looked around with wide eyes, probably wondering if this was all some kind of elaborate dream. Marcus chose a seat near one of the transparent sections of wall, watching stars whirl past at impossible speeds. Whatever propulsion system this ship used, it made human drives look like candles next to fusion torches. But, more than the technology, he found himself thinking about Zarathel herself. There had been something in her expression when she looked at him, something that went beyond simple compassion for a stranded human.
It was as if she recognized him, though that was impossible.
And her final warning echoed in his mind.
What could be waiting at their destination that would require such ominous foreshadowing?
The ship's harmonic vibration shifted to a lower tone, and, through the walls he could feel rather than hear something that might have been music. It was hauntingly beautiful, with complex harmonies that seemed to bypass his ears and resonate directly in his chest. Food arrived carried by figures even more exotic than Zarathel. These beings were clearly of the same species but showed incredible variation, some with skin in shades of green and blue, others with elaborate crests of what looked like crystal formations. All moved with the same fluid grace, and all regarded the humans with curious but friendly eyes. The food itself was another revelation. Fruits and vegetables in colors that didn't exist in nature, at least not in human nature. Meat that tasted like the best beef Marcus had ever eaten but, with an underlying flavor that was completely alien.
Everything was perfectly prepared and absolutely delicious.
"This is incredible, Dr. Martinez said around a mouthful of something that resembled a cross between an apple and a cantaloupe.
The genetic diversity alone must represent millions of years of agricultural development.
Or millions of years of evolution guided by intelligence, Dr. Park added thoughtfully. Look at the symmetry, the way the flavors complement each other.
This isn't just farming, it's art."
As they ate, more of the ship's crew moved past in the corridors. Marcus caught glimpses of beings that challenged every assumption he'd held about alien life. Some were clearly related to Zarathel's species, but others were so different they might have been from completely different worlds. Yet they all moved together with the easy familiarity of a close-knit community.
"How many different species are on this ship?" Thompson wondered aloud.
"Perhaps the question is not how many species," said Dr. Park slowly, "but how many peoples?
What if this isn't a single race, but an alliance? A confederation of different worlds and cultures?"
The idea sent a thrill through Marcus. Humanity had always assumed they were alone in the galaxy, that any alien contact would be a first meeting between two civilizations. But what if there was already a vast community out there, one that humanity had simply never encountered? Hours passed as the ship continued its journey through space that seemed increasingly unfamiliar. The stars outside had shifted to patterns Marcus didn't recognize, and, occasionally he caught sight of structures that couldn't possibly be natural. Geometric forms that stretched across impossible distances, obviously artificial but built on a scale that dwarfed anything humans had ever attempted. Finally, the harmonic vibration changed again, taking on an anticipatory quality. Zarathel appeared in the doorway, her expression serious but not unfriendly.
"We approach our destination," she announced.
"Prepare yourselves.
What you are about to see will change your understanding of what is possible."
Through the transparent walls, Marcus watched as something vast began to eclipse the stars. At first, he thought it was a planet, but, as details became visible, he realized it was something far more extraordinary. The sanctuary was a space station, but one that begged belief. It was enormous beyond human comprehension, a complex web of interconnected structures that seemed to go on forever.
Spires twisted through space like the branches of cosmic trees. Vast spheres hung in the void like artificial worlds.
And, throughout it all, lights moved in patterns that suggested a living city with millions of inhabitants. "Welcome," Zarathel said quietly, "to Haven's Heart, the nexus of the galactic sanctuary. For 10,000 years, it has been home to every people who chose cooperation over conquest, wisdom over war." Marcus pressed his face against the wall, trying to process what he was seeing.
This wasn't just a space station or even a small city.
This was a civilization, a whole society that existed in the void between stars.
"How many people live here?" he whispered.
"People?"
Zarathel's laugh was like silver bells. "Oh, Marcus Chen. You still think too small."
Haven's Heart is home to over 3 billion souls from more than 2,000 worlds. And you, children of Terra, are about to become the newest members of our community. As the ship moved deeper into the vast structure, Marcus caught sight of vessels from dozens of different cultures. Some were organic like Zarathel's ship, grown rather than built.
Others were crystalline constructs that bent light around them like living jewels.
Still others defied description entirely, their forms so alien that his human brain struggled to process them.
"This is impossible," Tommy breathed. "How has no one ever found this place? How have we never detected it?"
"Because you were not ready," Zarathel replied. "The sanctuary reveals itself only to those who have proven themselves worthy. Usually, this means a species that has achieved interstellar travel without destroying their homeworld.
But, occasionally."
She looked directly at Marcus. "We make exceptions." The ship settled into a docking bay that was itself larger than most human space stations. As the airlock cycled again, Marcus could hear sounds from outside, voices in a dozen languages, music that seemed to blend harmonics from across the galaxy, the hum of technologies that operated on principles he couldn't begin to understand.
"Come," Zarathel said, extending her hand toward the airlock. "Let me show you wonders that will make your old life seem like a half-remembered dream."
As Marcus followed her into the greatest adventure of his life, he had no idea that his destiny was about to become entangled with that of the magnificent dragon Maiden who had saved him from the void. Nor could he imagine that the failing space station he'd left behind would soon seem like paradise compared to the trials that awaited him in the vast community of Haven's Heart. But, for now, walking beside Zarathel through corridors that hummed with alien life and impossible beauty, Marcuschen felt truly alive for the first time in years. The universe had just revealed itself to be far stranger and more wonderful than he'd ever dared imagine. #stranded on a fading space settlement story. Second document. The accommodation quarters assigned to Marcus and his crew were unlike anything human architects had ever conceived. The walls curved organically, as if carved from the inside of some massive tree. Bioluminescent panels provided gentle illumination that seemed to respond to their circadian rhythms, gradually brightening and dimming to match Earth-normal day cycles. The furniture grew from the floor itself, molding perfectly to each person's body when they sat or lay down.
Marcus stood at the massive viewport in his assigned room, watching the endless activity of Haven's Heart.
Ships arrived and departed in streams of light, following traffic patterns that defied human understanding of physics. Beings of every conceivable form moved through transparent tubes that connected the station's various sections, their movements graceful despite the apparent lack of artificial gravity. A soft chime drew his attention to the door, which dilated open like the iris of an eye. Zarathel stepped inside, her bronze skin seeming to glow in the chamber's warm light. She'd changed from her practical traveling clothes into something that looked like it had been woven from starlight itself, a flowing garment that shifted colors as she moved. "I trust your quarters are acceptable," she asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. "They're incredible," Marcus replied honestly. "Everything here is incredible. I keep expecting to wake up and find myself back on Omega 7. Zarathel moved to stand beside him at the viewport, close enough that he could smell her scent, something like cinnamon and ozone and growing things. "Your people have a saying, do they not? That extraordinary circumstances require extraordinary measures? Something like that." Marcus glanced at her, noting the way the light caught the small scales along her neck. "Why did you save us?" "I mean, really save us? This place must have sensors that could detect our station's failure from light years away. You could have just let us die quietly." For a long moment, Zarathel was silent, her amber eyes fixed on the star patterns beyond the station. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight that spoke of painful memories. "Because once, long ago, my people were the ones crying out in the dark. We were refugees from a dying world, floating in makeshift ships with failing life support. And someone answered our call." She turned to face him fully. "The sanctuary was founded on a simple principle that no sentient being should die alone in the void when help is possible." "How long ago?" Marcus found himself asking. 37,000 of your years. We were among the first to be brought into the community. Now we are one of the senior peoples, and it is our honor to extend that same mercy to others." The numbers staggered him. 37,000 years ago, humans were still hunting woolly mammoths with stone spears. The civilization that had built this place was older than human agriculture, older than written language. And yet they'd taken the time to save 12 people from an insignificant research station. "What happens to us now?" he asked. "That depends entirely on what you choose to make happen." Zarathel's expression grew more serious. "Tomorrow, you and your crew will be brought before the Council of Voices. They will offer your people a choice: return to human space with our assistance and a vow of silence about what you've seen, or remain here as guests and eventual citizens of the sanctuary. And if we choose to stay? Then, you begin a new life among the stars. You learn, you grow, you contribute to our community. Some humans find purpose in our research divisions, studying the wonders of the galaxy. Others join exploration crews, seeking out new civilizations to invite into our fold. A few even become teachers, sharing human perspectives with peoples who have never encountered your species." Marcus felt his pulse quicken. The opportunity she was describing was beyond any dream he'd ever had. To explore the galaxy alongside beings whose technology and wisdom dwarfed anything humans had achieved? To be part of something larger than the petty corporate struggles that had dominated his life? "But there would be no going back," he said, understanding the magnitude of the choice. "No. Those who join us fully can never return to human space. The knowledge we share could destabilize your civilization if revealed prematurely. Humanity is still young, still learning to live with itself. The revelation that you are not alone in the universe, that there are powers beyond your comprehension, it could cause chaos." A soft harmonic tone filled the room, and Zarathel's expression brightened. "Ah, the evening gathering begins. Would you like to see more of our home?" Marcus nodded eagerly, and she led him from his quarters into corridors that bustled with alien life. The diversity was overwhelming: beings that walked on four legs, others that seemed to float without any visible means of support. Crystalline entities that chimed musical notes as they moved. Creatures that looked like they belonged in Earth's deepest oceans, breathing water contained in portable environments. But what struck him most was how they all interacted with casual familiarity. Different species worked together on complex tasks, shared meals at communal tables, even played games that seemed to involve patterns of light and sound rather than physical pieces. This wasn't just a space station, it was a true community. "How do you make it work?" Marcus asked as they walked. "All these different peoples, different biologies, different ways of thinking?" "The same way any community works," Zarathel replied. "Mutual respect, shared goals, and the understanding that diversity is strength." When the crystalline hegemony developed their phase shift technology, they shared it freely. When the Oceanic Collective perfected biological computing, they taught it to anyone interested in learning. Each people contributes their unique gifts to the whole. They passed through a section that seemed devoted to education, where beings of every description sat in circles around teachers who were demonstrating concepts that Marcus couldn't begin to follow. In one room, a creature that looked like a living tree was showing students how to manipulate gravity with their hands. In another, something resembling an intelligent cloud of gas was teaching mathematics through patterns of colored light.
Your crew is adapting well, Zarathel observed as they walked.
Dr. Martinez has already begun studying our agricultural methods. She seems particularly interested in how we grow food in zero-gravity environments.
And the others? Dr. Park has been asking endless questions about xenobiology.
I believe she may never sleep again from excitement. Your engineer, Petrov, is fascinated by our biomechanical systems. He keeps asking to examine the ship that brought you here. They entered a vast central plaza where hundreds of beings had gathered for what appeared to be some kind of cultural event. On a raised platform in the center, performers from different species were creating a collaborative artwork that combined music, light, movement, and sense into something that bypassed rational thought and spoke directly to the emotions. Marcus found himself mesmerized by the performance. The music wasn't just sound but seemed to include harmonics that his human ears couldn't detect but his body could feel. The lights painted pictures in three-dimensional space that told stories without words. And, somehow, impossibly, he could understand the narrative even though it referenced concepts and experiences completely outside human knowledge.
Beautiful, is it not? Zarathel said softly.
This piece tells the story of the Great Convergence, when our various peoples first came together to form the sanctuary. Each performer represents one of the founding species, and their art shows how our different perspectives combine to create something greater than the sum of its parts. As they watched, Marcus became aware of someone approaching from behind. He turned to see Commander Thompson walking toward them with an expression he'd never seen on her face before, wonder mixed with something that might have been fear.
Marcus, there you are. I've been looking all over for you.
She glanced at Zarathel with poorly concealed nervousness. Ma'am, I hope you don't mind me interrupting, but I need to speak with my communications officer.
Of course, Zarathel replied graciously. I shall leave you to your discussion. Marcus, perhaps tomorrow you would join me for a tour of our research districts? I believe you would find them illuminating.
After she'd glided away with that distinctive fluid motion, Thompson grabbed Marcus's arm.
We need to talk. Now. Somewhere private. They found a quiet alcove off one of the smaller corridors, away from the bustle of station activity.
Thompson checked to make sure they weren't being observed before speaking in a low, urgent voice.
Marcus, I've been talking to some of the other humans here. Yes, there are other humans here.
People who were rescued or who chose to join this place over the past several decades.
And I've learned some things that are extremely concerning. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. What kind of things?
First, once you formally join this community, you really can't leave.
Ever. They have some kind of treatment that prevents you from surviving in normal human environments.
Something about adapting your biology to handle the exotic radiations and atmospheric mixtures used throughout the sanctuary. That could just be a medical necessity, Marcus pointed out, though he was already feeling uneasy.
Maybe.
But here's the thing that really worries me, none of the humans I've talked to can give me straight answers about how long they've been here. They know it's been years, sometimes decades, but they can't seem to focus on specific dates or details about their previous lives.
It's like their memories have been edited.
Marcus thought about his conversation with Zarathel, trying to remember if she'd shown any signs of deception. But her manner had seemed completely straightforward, even when discussing difficult topics.
Maybe they just don't want to think about the past, he suggested. If you knew you could never go home again, wouldn't you try to forget what you'd left behind? Or maybe they've been made to forget. Thompson's expression was grim.
Marcus, I'm starting to think this whole place might be some kind of elaborate prison. they collect refugees and castaways from across the galaxy, give them a beautiful cage to live in, then make sure they can never leave or tell anyone what they've seen. Before Marcus could respond, they were interrupted by the approach of another human, a middle-aged man with prematurely gray hair and the kind of deep tan that came from working under alien suns. "Excuse me," the man said with a slight accent that sounded European. "I couldn't help but overhear part of your conversation. I'm Dr. Hans Weber, formerly of the colony ship Nui Heimat. I've been here for, quite some time now." "How long?" Thompson asked immediately. Weber paused, his brow furrowing as if the question caused him genuine confusion. "You know, that's harder to answer than you might think. Time moves differently here, with no natural day-night cycle and with different species operating on different biological rhythms. I'd estimate perhaps 8 years? Maybe 10? But surely you remember when you arrived," Thompson pressed. "What year was it in Earth Standard Calendar?" Again, that confused expression. There was some kind of emergency with our colony ship. Engine failure, I think. Or perhaps it was a plague outbreak? The details seemed somehow unimportant now." He shook his head as if clearing it. "What matters is that I'm here now, contributing to the most important research project in galactic history." "What kind of research?" Marcus asked, though he was beginning to share Thompson's concerns about the man's obvious memory issues. Weber's face lit up with genuine enthusiasm. "Consciousness transfer. We're working on ways to preserve the essential patterns of thought and memory across different biological substrates. Imagine the possibilities: beings could share experiences directly, or even transfer from one body to another as their original forms age or are damaged." "That sounds like a form of immortality," Thompson said slowly. "Exactly. Though of course, there are still technical challenges to overcome. The process isn't perfect yet, some memories are lost or altered during transfer, and the new neural patterns don't always integrate smoothly with the host consciousness." Marcus and Thompson exchanged alarmed glances. Weber was describing exactly the kind of technology that could explain the memory gaps Thompson had noticed in the other human residents. "Dr. Weber," Marcus said carefully, "have you undergone this consciousness transfer process yourself?" "Oh yes, several times. It's part of the adaptation process for new residents. The original human neural structure isn't really compatible with the exotic energy fields present throughout the sanctuary. Without the modifications, prolonged exposure would cause cellular breakdown and eventual death." "And you don't remember any negative effects from these transfers?" Weber looked puzzled by the question. "Negative effects? Why would there be negative effects? The process is designed to preserve everything important about who you are while making you compatible with our new environment. If anything, I feel more myself than ever before." After Weber had wandered off, returning to whatever research project occupied his modified mind, Thompson grabbed Marcus's arm again. "We need to get the crew together and get off this station before they do to us what they've done to him," she hissed. "I don't care how beautiful this place is or how advanced their technology might be. They're stealing people's memories and calling it adaptation." Marcus wanted to argue, wanted to believe that Zarathel and her people were genuinely benevolent. But Weber's obvious confusion about his own past was deeply disturbing. How could someone forget basic details about their own life, even after years of living in a strange environment? "Okay," he said finally. "We'll gather the crew and present a united front at tomorrow's council meeting. We'll ask to be returned to human space. And hope they actually honor that choice," Thompson added grimly. That night, Marcus lay in his perfectly comfortable bioengineered bed, staring at the ceiling as it displayed slowly shifting patterns of stars. Every rational part of his mind told him that Thompson was right to be suspicious. No organization, no matter how advanced or benevolent, rescued people out of pure altruism. There had to be something they wanted in return. But he couldn't stop thinking about Zarathel's expression when she talked about her people being refugees themselves. There had been genuine pain in her voice, the kind that came from personal experience rather than rehearsed sympathy. And the way she looked at him, there was something there that went beyond simple kindness. A soft sound from outside his quarters caught his attention, footsteps that were lighter than human gait but more substantial than many of the other species he'd observed. He moved to the door, which dilated silently at his approach. Zarathel stood in the corridor, no longer wearing her formal garments but dressed in something that looked more like workout clothes. Her bronze skin glistened with a light sheen of moisture, and her breathing was slightly elevated as if she'd been exercising. "I apologize for disturbing you," she said softly. "I know your people require more sleep than mine. But I wanted to speak with you before tomorrow's council meeting." "It's fine, I couldn't sleep anyway." He gestured for her to come inside, and she entered with that fluid grace he was beginning to associate with her people. "You have concerns about remaining here," she said without preamble. "Your commander has been asking pointed questions about the other humans in our community." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. Had they been under surveillance this whole time? Are we prisoners here? No more than anyone else who lives in the sanctuary. But, Marcus. She moved closer, and he could see worry in her amber eyes. "I need you to understand something. The choice you make tomorrow will be final. If you ask to leave, we will honor that request. But, if you choose to stay, there truly is no going back. The modifications required for long-term survival here are irreversible." "What kind of modifications?" Zarathel was quiet for a long moment, as if weighing how much truth to reveal. "Your human neural structure is remarkably adaptable, but it wasn't designed for the kind of psychic emanations present throughout the sanctuary. Extended exposure to our mental networks would cause permanent damage to unmodified human consciousness." "Mental networks?" "We are a telepathic species, Marcus. Not in the crude sense your fiction depicts, we cannot read thoughts or control minds. But we exist in a constant state of low-level empathic connection with those around us. It's how we maintain social harmony across thousands of different cultures. Over time, unprotected human minds begin to fray around the edges when exposed to our mental field." Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. "And the consciousness transfer process fixes this? It creates a buffer layer between your original thoughts and the background telepathic noise. But, yes, some memories are lost in the process. Usually the most traumatic or painful ones, which most people consider a benefit rather than a loss. But it's still changing who we are. Is the person you become through experience and growth not still you? The Marcuscan who might choose to stay here will not be identical to the one who was rescued from that failing station. But neither would the Marcuscan who returns to human space and lives out his life among his own people." She moved even closer, close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. "I will not lie to you about the costs. But I also want you to understand the rewards. The knowledge we could share with you, the wonders we could show you. There are humans here who have seen the birth of stars and the discovery of new forms of life. They have contributed to advances in science and philosophy that your species will not achieve on its own for millennia. And they can't remember their families back home. They remember what matters. Love, joy, the bonds that truly define us. The pain of loss fades, but the capacity for new connections grows stronger." Marcus looked into her eyes and saw something there that made his breath catch. It wasn't just professional interest or diplomatic concern. There was something personal in the way she was looking at him, something that spoke of deeper feelings than a rescue worker should have for a refugee. "Why does this matter so much to you?" he asked quietly. "Specifically to you, I mean. You're not the only one who could have rescued us, are you?" Zarathel's bronze skin flushed slightly, a darker gold spreading across her cheeks. "No. I volunteered for the mission when your distress signal was detected. I told the council it was because I have experience dealing with human psychology. But that was not entirely truthful." "Then, why?" She turned away, moving to the viewport to look out at the stars. "Because 47 years ago, I was part of a first contact team that encountered a human exploration vessel. The ship was damaged, its crew stranded in an uninhabitable system. We provided assistance and remained in contact with them for several months while repairs were completed.
Marcus felt a growing certainty that this story was about to become very personal. There was one crew member, the ship's navigator. He was brilliant, brave, curious about everything. We spent many hours in conversation, sharing perspectives on the universe and our respective peoples. When their ship was repaired and ready to depart, She paused, her voice becoming softer. He asked if he could remain with us. But the protocols were different then. First contact procedures required that all humans be returned to their own space immediately. What happened to him? His name was David Chen. He returned to human space and lived a full life. Married, had children, contributed to his people's space exploration programs. And every year since then, I have monitored human expansion into space, watching for any sign of his descendants. Marcus felt the world shift around him as understanding dawned. Chen is a common name among humans. But not so common when combined with a gift for mathematics, a talent for communication, and a curiosity about the universe that borders on reckless. Zarathel turned back to face him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. You are his grandson, Marcus Chen. I recognized you the moment I saw your personnel file. The revelation hit him like a physical blow. His grandfather David had been a navigator on one of the early exploration missions, but he'd rarely talked about his time in space. Marcus had always assumed it was because the old man considered civilian life boring after the excitement of exploration. He never mentioned meeting aliens, Marcus said weakly. Because he was sworn to secrecy. The contact protocols of that era required complete silence about any encounters with non-human intelligence. But he kept personal journals. Zarathel reached into a pocket and withdrew a small crystalline device. Journals that were forwarded to our archives after his death. She activated the device, and suddenly, the room was filled with a holographic projection. Marcus found himself looking at his grandfather as a young man, sitting in what was obviously the cabin of a spaceship. The projection began to speak in a voice Marcus remembered from childhood, though decades younger. Personal log, David Chen, day 43 of the repair mission. Had another long conversation with Zarathel today about human concepts of art and beauty. I'm starting to think she understands our species better than most humans do. There's something about the way she looks at the universe, like it's full of wonders waiting to be discovered rather than problems waiting to be solved. The image paused, looking directly out of the projection with eyes that were unmistakably related to Marcus's own. I think I'm falling in love with her. Which is probably the most complicated situation anyone has ever gotten themselves into. How do you build a relationship with someone from a different species? Someone you may never see again once this mission is over? The projection continued for several more minutes, detailing David Chen's growing feelings for Zarathel and his agonizing decision about whether to request permission to stay with her people. In the end, duty to his own crew had won out over personal desire, but the pain of that choice was obvious in every word. When the recording ended, Marcus looked at Zarathel with new understanding. You've been waiting almost 50 years to see him again. To see someone who carried his genetic legacy and might share his curiosity about the universe beyond human space. Zarathel's voice was barely above a whisper. I know it is not fair to ask you to make such a momentous decision based on connections you never knew existed. But, when I received word of humans in distress, when I saw that one of them was named Shin, I could not ignore the possibility. Marcus felt as if the universe had just rearranged itself around him. Everything about his rescue, about the way Zarathel had looked at him, about her obvious personal investment in his choice suddenly made sense. She wasn't just saving random humans from a failing space station. She was completing a love story that had been interrupted nearly half a century ago. What would you have done if I turned out to be nothing like him? Marcus asked. I would have rescued you anyway. All of you. Because that is what we do, we offer sanctuary to those who need it. But, I confess. She stepped closer again, close enough that he could see the patterns of scales along her neck. I confess I hoped you might be someone I could come to care for in your own right. And, am I? The question slipped out before Marcus could stop himself. Zarathel reached up and gently touched his face with fingers that were warm and slightly rough from the tiny scales that covered them. You are your grandfather's descendant in all the ways that matter. Brave, curious, kind to those in need. But you are also entirely yourself and that person I find myself caring for more than wisdom would dictate. Marcus felt himself leaning into her touch, his rational mind screaming warnings while every instinct told him this was exactly where he belonged. Tomorrow he would have to choose between the life he'd known and a future among the stars. But tonight, looking into the amber eyes of a dragon maiden who had waited decades for the chance to complete her interrupted love story, the choice suddenly seemed a lot less difficult than it had hours before. The council meeting tomorrow, he said softly. What happens if I choose to stay? Then, you begin the process of becoming someone who can survive and thrive in our community. The consciousness transfer, the biological modifications, the integration into our mental networks. It will change you, but... She smiled, revealing those slightly pointed teeth that he was beginning to find beautiful rather than alien. I believe it will change you into someone you will be proud to become. And if I choose to leave? Her expression grew sad but not bitter. Then, I will personally escort you and your crew back to human space, ensure you are safely returned to your people, and spend the rest of my very long life wondering what might have been. Marcus understood that he was standing at the threshold of the most important decision he would ever make. Behind him lay everything familiar: human space, human problems, the slow and sometimes painful progress of his own species toward maturity. Ahead lay wonders beyond imagination, knowledge that would make him more than human, and the love of a being whose people had already walked among the stars when his ancestors were discovering fire. But, as he stood there in the warm glow of bioluminescent walls, feeling the gentle vibration of a living ship around him and the heat of Zarathel's touch on his skin, Marcus realized the choice had already been made. Perhaps it had been made the moment he'd first heard her voice over the communications system of a dying space station. Perhaps it had been made 47 years ago when his grandfather chose duty over love and created a debt that only his descendant could repay. Tomorrow, he would stand before the Council of Voices and formally declare his intention to join the Galactic Sanctuary. Tonight, he would learn what it meant to fall in love with someone whose heart had been waiting for him across decades and species barriers. And, in the days to come, he would discover whether a human consciousness could truly adapt to life among the dragons and crystals and impossible beings who called the void between worlds their home. But, first, he had to convince his crew that they were making the right choice, even if that choice meant giving up everything they'd ever known for the chance to become something greater than they'd ever imagined possible. #stranded on a fading space settlement story. Third document. The council chamber of Haven's heart defied every human concept of architecture and governance. Rather than a formal meeting hall with fixed seating, the space seemed to reshape itself around its occupants. Flowing platforms of what looked like crystallized music rose from the floor to accommodate beings of every conceivable physiology. The walls themselves were transparent, offering a breathtaking view of the galaxy wheeling around them in all its cosmic glory. Marcus stood with his 11 crewmates in the center of the chamber, trying not to show how overwhelmed he felt by the sheer diversity of the assembled council. There were beings of living crystal who chimed softly as they moved, creatures that looked like they belonged in Earth's deepest oceans breathing through portable atmosphere bubbles, and entities so alien that his human brain struggled to process their forms at all. But, dominating the assembly were the dragons, Zarathel's people, though Marcus now understood they were called something closer to star-touched in their own language. They were the senior species here, the ones who had helped found the sanctuary thousands of years ago. Their elegant forms and natural grace made them natural leaders, and their telepathic abilities allowed them to serve as intermediaries between species who couldn't directly communicate. "Welcome, children of Terra," spoke the council's primary voice, a dragon whose scales shimmered between deep purple and silver. Unlike Zarathel's warm bronze coloring, this being seemed to embody the cold beauty of deep space itself. "I am Kethran the eldest, speaker for this gathering. We convene to offer you the choice that has been offered to all refugees who find sanctuary among us." Commander Thompson stepped forward, her military bearing unchanged despite everything they'd experienced. "Honored Counselor, we appreciate the rescue and hospitality your people have shown us. However, after careful consideration, my crew and I request transportation back to human space."
A susurrus of harmonic communication rippled through the council, not words but emotions and concepts exchanged at the speed of thought. Marcus felt Zarathel's presence somewhere behind him, though she hadn't spoken since bringing them to the chamber.
This choice is understood and will be honored, Kethran replied. However, protocol requires that each individual voice their decision independently. The choice to remain in the sanctuary or return to your birth realm affects not just your own future, but the delicate balance of knowledge and secrecy that protects all our peoples.
We've discussed this as a crew, Thompson said firmly.
We're unanimous in our decision to return home.
Nevertheless, each must speak for themselves.
Kethran's gaze swept over the assembled humans.
Dr. Martinez, you have been observing our agricultural methods with great interest.
Do you wish to remain and learn techniques that could revolutionize food production across the galaxy?
Dr. Martinez hesitated, and Marcus could see the genuine conflict in her expression.
The opportunity to study alien farming methods was everything she'd dreamed of as a scientist.
But, after a moment, she shook her head.
I want to return to human space.
My family, my children need their mother. One by one, the council questioned each crew member.
Petrov, despite his fascination with biomechanical engineering.
Tommy Harrison, who had been awed by everything he'd seen but was terrified of the consciousness modification process. Dr. Park, who agonized visibly over leaving behind the greatest xenobiological discovery in human history.
Each time, the answer was the same. Return to human space.
Return to families and familiar worlds and a life that made sense within human parameters. Until the council's attention turned to Marcus. Communications Officer Chen, Kethran's voice carried harmonic undertones that suggested the dragon knew exactly what was about to happen.
Your grandfather once faced a similar choice. Do you follow his path, or forge your own?
Marcus felt every eye in the chamber upon him, human and alien alike. Thompson was watching him with growing alarm, obviously sensing that his answer might be different from the others.
Somewhere in the assembled dragons, he could feel Zarathel's presence like a warm current in his mind, though she made no attempt to influence his decision.
I choose to remain, he said quietly, then raised his voice so it carried throughout the chamber.
I formally request citizenship in the Galactic Sanctuary. The reaction was immediate and intense.
Thompson spun toward him with an expression of shocked betrayal. Several of his crewmates began protesting at once, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of concern and confusion. But Marcus kept his eyes fixed on Kethran, waiting for the dragon's response. The choice is acknowledged, the elder dragon said, raising a clawed hand for silence.
But it creates complications. Never before has a rescue group chosen to divide. Usually, organic social bonds ensure that refugees choose together, as a unit. Marcus, what the hell do you think you're doing?
Thompson's voice cut through the diplomatic discussion like a plasma torch.
We talked about this.
We agreed we were all going home together. Marcus turned to face his commander, his former commander, he realized.
We talked about the dangers. But we didn't talk about the opportunities. Jane, they're offering me a chance to be part of something incredible. To learn about the universe in ways humans won't achieve for centuries.
They're offering to scramble your brains and turn you into something that isn't human anymore, Thompson shot back.
Marcus, this is some kind of psychological manipulation. They've been working on you since we arrived, playing on your curiosity and your loneliness.
Before Marcus could respond, another voice entered the conversation, but not through sound. Words appeared directly in his mind, warm and familiar, carrying with them overtones of emotion that no human language could convey. She fears for you because she cares for you. This is natural and speaks well of her character. But fear should not dictate such momentous choices. Marcus looked around and found Zarathel among the assembled dragons. She was focusing intently on something in the distance, giving no sign that she was the source of the telepathic communication. But he could feel her presence in his mind like sunlight through a window. Is this what the consciousness modification feels like? He thought back, not sure if she would receive it. A pale shadow. When you are properly integrated into our network, communication will be as natural as breathing. You will never be truly alone again. The promise of that connection, that belonging, made Marcus's decision feel even more right. He'd spent his whole life feeling like an outsider among his own species, too curious, too restless, too fascinated by the unknown. Here was a community where those traits were valued rather than tolerated. "I'm sorry, Jane," he said aloud.
"But this isn't manipulation. It's recognition.
Recognition that I belong here more than I ever belonged in human space." Dr. Park stepped forward, her expression torn between scientific excitement and human concern. "Marcus, even if you're right about belonging here, think about what you're giving up. Your family, your friends, everything you've ever known."
"What family?" Marcus asked with more bitterness than he'd intended. "My parents died in a transport accident 10 years ago.
My sister moved to the inner colonies and we exchange maybe one message a year.
The closest thing I have to real relationships are the people standing in this room right now."
"Then, come home with us," Tommy pleaded.
"We're your family too."
Marcus felt his resolve waver for a moment.
These people had shared 3 years of isolation with him on Omega 7.
They'd faced death together in the cold void of space. Leaving them felt like the worst kind of abandonment. But, then, he thought about returning to human space, filing reports about their rescue by an unknown alien vessel, and spending the rest of his life pretending that the wonders of Haven's Heart had been just another routine cargo run. The thought made him feel claustrophobic.
"I can't," he said simply. "I can't go back to pretending the universe is small."
Kethran spoke again, his harmonics carrying notes of genuine concern.
"Officer Chen, you understand that the choice you are making will permanently separate you from your birth species?
Once the integration process begins, your modified consciousness will be unable to survive in normal human space. The energy fields and telepathic networks that sustain our community would be absent, causing your enhanced neural patterns to collapse."
"I understand. And you understand that the person who emerges from the integration process, while carrying your memories and personality, will not be identical to who you are now?
Some aspects of your human perspective will necessarily be altered to allow compatibility with our collective consciousness." Marcus glanced at Zarathel again, drawing strength from her warm presence in his mind.
"Will I still be me?"
"You will be the person you were always meant to become," Kethran replied. "But that person may be very different from who you believe yourself to be now." From across the chamber, Dr. Martinez spoke up.
"Marcus, please. Think about what you're doing.
You're talking about erasing yourself and replacing yourself with some kind of alien hybrid." "I'm talking about becoming more than human," Marcus replied. "About joining a community that's been exploring the galaxy for millennia while our species was still throwing rocks at each other." "But, at what cost?" Thompson's voice was heavy with pain.
"Marcus, I've known you for 3 years.
You're curious, yes, but you're also loyal.
You don't abandon the people who depend on you."
The accusation hit harder than Marcus had expected.
Was he abandoning his crew? Or was he choosing a path that would eventually benefit all of humanity, when his people were finally ready to learn about the larger universe?
"There is no wrong choice," Zarathel's voice whispered in his mind. Only different paths leading to different futures. Your commander speaks from love and fear, both valid emotions. But you must choose based on who you are, not who others need you to be. "I'm not abandoning anyone," Marcus said, though the words felt hollow even to him. "I'm taking a path that might someday help bridge the gap between humans and the rest of the galaxy. When humanity is ready for contact, they'll need people who understand both worlds."
"Pretty words," Thompson said bitterly. "But the reality is that you're choosing aliens over your own species. Over people who've bled with you and trusted you."
The council allowed the humans to argue for several more minutes, but eventually Kethran called for silence again. The debates could continue indefinitely, but the fundamental choice remains unchanged.
"Officer Chen has requested integration into our community. The rest of his birth group has requested return to human space. Both choices will be honored." "How long?" Marcus asked. "How long before the integration process is complete?" Approximately one of your months.
The consciousness modification must be done gradually to minimize trauma and ensure proper neural integration. During this time, you will remain in contact with your former crewmates, so they may observe that you retain your essential self throughout the process.
Thompson's expression softened slightly. And, after that?
After that, Officer Chen will begin his new life as a citizen of the sanctuary. Your group will be provided with transportation back to human space, along with a cover story explaining your rescue by an automated probe. You will be sworn to secrecy about everything you have seen here.
And, if we break that oath? Kethran's expression grew cold. Then, you will discover that the sanctuary's commitment to non-interference has limits. We will not allow premature revelation of our existence to destabilize human civilization.
The threat was politely phrased but unmistakably real. Marcus felt a chill as he realized the true scope of the choice he was making. It wasn't just about his own future, it was about potentially putting his crewmates in danger if they ever revealed what they'd learned.
"I'm sorry," he said to Thompson and the others. "I know this isn't what you wanted. But, it's what I need to do."
Thompson stared at him for a long moment, her expression cycling through anger, hurt, and, finally, resignation.
"I hope you're right about this, Marcus. I really do. Because if you're wrong, if I'm wrong, then I'll face the consequences.
But, at least I'll face them as someone who chose his own path." The council session concluded with formal pronouncements and ritualistic exchanges that Marcus barely registered. His attention was focused on the mixture of emotions radiating from his soon-to-be former crewmates. Disappointment, fear, a sense of abandonment that cut him deeper than he'd expected. But, also, from Dr. Park especially, a grudging understanding of why he'd made the choice he had. As the humans were escorted from the chamber, Zarathel approached Marcus with that familiar fluid grace. Up close, he could see relief and joy warring with concern in her amber eyes. "You are certain of your choice?" she asked softly. "As certain as anyone can be about a decision this momentous," Marcus replied.
"But, yes. I want to be here. I want to learn what you have to teach. Even knowing that you will never see your birth world again? Never speak with another unmodified human?"
Marcus thought about Earth, about the colonies where humans struggled to build new lives under alien suns. Important work, necessary work, but ultimately limited by the boundaries of human knowledge and human imagination. "I think the person I become will find ways to help humanity that the person I am now never could," he said.
"Maybe not directly, maybe not for decades.
But, someday, when humans are ready for the larger universe, they'll need guides who understand both sides of the equation."
Zarathel's expression grew warm, and she placed a scaled hand on his arm. "Come. Let me show you the integration facilities. The process is intense, but not unpleasant. Like learning to see colors that have no names in your language."
As they walked through corridors that pulsed with bioluminescent life, Marcus tried not to think about the look of betrayal in Thompson's eyes or the way Tommy had flinched when he'd announced his decision. Instead, he focused on the future, on the knowledge waiting to be absorbed, the wonders waiting to be explored, and the possibility of love with a being whose people had been traveling between stars when his ancestors were discovering agriculture. The integration chamber was smaller than he'd expected, more like a comfortable bedroom than a medical facility. The walls were covered in what looked like flowering vines, but Marcus could sense that they were actually some kind of bioneural interface. A pool of warm, luminescent water occupied the center of the space, with steps leading down into its glowing depths.
"The process begins in the water," Zarathel explained.
"The bioneural organisms will make initial contact with your nervous system, mapping your current neural patterns and beginning the modification process. You will remain conscious throughout, though you may experience vivid dreams or visions."
"Will it hurt?"
"Pain is not the right word. You will feel expansion. As if your mind is growing beyond the boundaries of your skull. Some find it frightening at first, but most describe it as liberating." Marcus looked at the glowing pool, understanding that once he entered it, there would truly be no going back. His human life would end, and something new would begin. The thought was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure.
Will you stay with me? He asked. For as long as you need me, Zarathel replied. Though once the process begins, you will be able to sense my presence without words or physical proximity. The network connects all of us in ways your language cannot describe. Marcus began removing his clothing, feeling strangely ceremonial about the act. Each piece he shed felt like another step away from his human identity and toward whatever he was about to become. Zarathel, he said as he prepared to enter the water. When this is over, when I'm fully integrated, will you still care for me the way you cared for my grandfather? Her expression grew tender, and he could feel warmth radiating from her that had nothing to do with physical heat. Marcus-chan, I cared for your grandfather because he was brave and curious and kind. You carry those same qualities, but you are not a replacement for him. You are your own person, making your own choices. And the being you will become. She smiled, revealing those slightly pointed teeth that no longer seemed alien at all. I believe that being and I will build something entirely new together. Marcus stepped into the warm, glowing water and felt it embrace him like liquid starlight. Almost immediately, he sensed the bioneural organisms making contact with his skin, his nervous system, the very essence of who he was. Instead of invasion, it felt like welcome, as if he was finally coming home after a lifetime of wandering. Through the growing network connection, he could feel Zarathel's mind touching his, sharing memories and emotions and perspectives that no human had ever experienced. But, more than that, he could sense the vast community of Haven's heart, millions of consciousnesses from thousands of species, all connected in a web of shared knowledge and mutual support. For the first time in his life, Marcus Chen was not alone. The visions began almost immediately, images of his grandfather as a young man, walking the corridors of an alien ship and falling in love with a dragon maiden who would wait almost 50 years for another chance at happiness. He saw the founding of the sanctuary, the gradual gathering of refugee peoples into a community that spanned the galaxy. He witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, the birth of new species, the discovery of scientific principles that human understanding wouldn't approach for millennia. And, through it all, he felt himself changing. Not losing who he was, but becoming more than he had ever imagined possible. His human perspective remained, but it expanded to encompass viewpoints that were crystalline, oceanic, gaseous, energy-based. He learned to think in harmonics that could express concepts for which no words existed. He discovered senses that could detect the emotional resonance of distant stars. The process took exactly 28 Earth Standard days, though Marcus's perception of time became fluid and flexible as his consciousness adapted to the network's temporal flow. Throughout the integration, he remained in intermittent contact with his former crewmates, though each conversation became more difficult as the gap between his expanding awareness and their human limitations grew wider. Thompson visited him on the final day, her expression a mixture of curiosity and barely concealed grief. Marcus was floating in the bioneural pool when she arrived, his skin now showing the same subtle bronze scaling as Zarathel's, his eyes beginning to develop the vertical pupils that marked full integration into dragon consciousness. How do you feel? She asked. Like I'm remembering things I never knew I'd forgotten, Marcus replied, his voice carrying new harmonic undertones. Jane, I can sense your emotions from here. The fear, the sadness, the anger at my choice. But I can also sense something else, relief that I seem happy. Thompson's composure cracked slightly. You do seem happy. Different, but happy. I just wish. You wish I'd chosen differently. I know. But, look at me, really look. Do I seem diminished? Damaged? Less than human? She studied his transformed features, noting the scales, the eyes, the sense of vast awareness behind his familiar smile. No, she admitted. You seem more. But, that doesn't make losing you any easier. You're not losing me. You're sending me ahead to scout the territory. Someday, when humanity is ready, I'll be here to help with first contact. To serve as a bridge between what humans are now and what they could become. And if humanity is never ready? Marcus smiled, an expression that now carried the warmth of dragonfire. Then, at least one human will have had the chance to see what lies beyond the boundaries of our small corner of the galaxy.
Thompson reached out and gently touched his transformed hand, feeling the scales that marked his transition into something beyond human categorization. Take care of yourself, Marcus.
And, thank you for making the hard choice so the rest of us didn't have to.
After she left, Marcus remained in the binaural pool for several more hours, feeling the final stages of integration settling into place. When he finally emerged, he was no longer entirely human, but he wasn't entirely dragon either. He was something new, a hybrid consciousness that bridged the gap between species. Zarathel was waiting for him, her expression radiant with joy and anticipation.
How do I look?
Marcus asked, examining his transformed reflection in the chamber's bioluminescent walls. Like someone who was always meant to be exactly where he is, she replied, moving to stand beside him.
Are you ready to see what we can build together?
Marcus looked at her, with senses that could now perceive the energy patterns that surrounded her like visible music, the emotional resonance that marked her as his perfect complement. Through the network, he could feel the vast community of Haven's heart welcoming him as a full citizen. In the distance, he sensed his former crewmates preparing for their journey back to human space, carrying with them memories they would never be allowed to share. It should have made him sad. Instead, he felt only anticipation for the wonders that lay ahead. I'm ready, he said, taking Zarathel's scaled hand in his own.
Show me the universe.
Together, they walked from the integration chamber into a life that would span centuries of exploration, discovery, and love among the stars. Behind them, the last traces of Marcus's purely human existence dissolved into the binaural pool like sugar in warm water. Ahead lay adventures that would make his grandfather's interrupted romance seem like the opening chapter of an epic that was still being written. In the depths of space, Haven's heart continued its eternal dance between the stars, home to billions of beings who had chosen community over isolation, wisdom over warfare. And, in the growing network of minds that sustain that community, one new voice added its harmony to the cosmic song, human in origin but galactic in scope, ready to help guide his birth species toward their own eventual place among the peoples of the void. The story of Marcus Chen the human had ended. The legend of Marcus Chen the bridge builder between worlds was just beginning.